Welcome to a TLDR Cata guide for Halfus Wormbreaker, for anyone only pretending to hate Cataclysm. Halfus is the first boss in Bastion of Twilight and is an ad fight shitshow, and he has a dragon in the sky to rain fire. 5 ads around the room give the boss his abilities, and releasing them counters each one. On normal, only 3 are active, rotating each week, but on heroic, you get them all. The Storm Rider gives Shadow Nova a big hit of raid-wide damage on a very short cast, but when released, it slows by 500%, so make your Shaman kick it. The Nether Scion increases attack speed by 100%, but lowers it when released, as well as damage and hit chance. The Whelplings give the Overhead Dragon a channeled raid-wide cast, so pop a healer CD if you need. And when released, they reduce the damage like putting a band-aid on a broken leg. The Time Warden gives the dragon Fireball Barrage, sending fireballs all over the platform to dodge if you can see them. When released, it slows them down, making it harder for casters to ignore the mechanics. And lastly for tanks, the Slate Dragon gives the boss Malevolent Strikes, giving you a stacking healing reduction debuff, so swap before you fall over. When released, it stuns the boss every so often and increases his damage taken by 100% for 12 seconds for a nice burst window. The release priority is the Storm Rider, then the Nether Scion, then Time Warden, then Whelplings, then Slate Dragon. Release as many as you can on pull, but if your tank can't hold threat or your healer IQs are in the single digits, you probably all f***ing die, so leave 1 or 2 until later. On heroic, once the first 2 ads are dead, release whatever you have left or release them all at once to let your warlocks and mages jizz over their damage. Once you have them grouped up, pop lust and blast the shit out of them, focusing the ads down first. Alternatively, wait until the ads are dead before you lust, as when they die, they give the boss a stacking damage taken increase. It's worth using Blessing Protection during the ad shit show to reset the tank stacks, but remember to retaunt the boss so it doesn't squash people. Focus the ads down first and try to kill them all before the boss hits 50%. At 50%, the boss gains Furious Roar, a triple hit of raid-wide damage that stuns everyone for 2 seconds at a time. He usually ends with a Shadow Nova, so have a mage blink the final stun to kick the cast, or make sure someone has the reactions of a PvPer. Then just kill the boss with a souped up damage before the hard enrage. These twin dragons share health with 1 on the ground and 1 in the air, alternating which is where. For tanks, both dragons apply Twilight Shift, and at 5 stacks you deal splash damage and send anyone nearby to the Shadow Realm. Find a portal to get back while dodging exploding orbs and hope your off-tank was paying attention. Blackout is a debuff on someone that deals massive split damage when dispelled, so everyone stack on the boss to soak it. And Devouring Flames is a wide frontal cone on a random player, so don't stand in it. Theralion casts Twilight Blast, making random players deal splash damage, so range should spread out. He also casts Dazzling Destruction, a series of large purple swells, so don't stand in them or you'll go see Yugi's grandpa. After the cast finishes, they swap places and transition. On the ground, Theralion now casts Engulfing Magic, marking someone who deals damage to anyone nearby whenever they deal damage or healing, so don't stand near anyone if it's on you. He also casts Fabulous Flames, which spawns a patch of fire, so don't stand in it. In the air, Valiona casts Twilight Meteorite, dealing massive split damage to a random target, so again, stack up under the boss to soak it. Or if you can, piss off to a random corner and immune it. She also casts Deep Breath, so watch where she's flying to dodge it, and if you need someone to call where she is, make sure they can tell left from right without using their hands. And after 3 flybys, she lands and they transition again, continuing like this for the rest of the fight. On heroic, you now get ads in the Shadow Realm, dealing damage to random players both inside and out. Make a strike team of as many as you want or as little as you can get away with at least 1 healer to clean up the ads and keep the raid damage down. Use the Tank Explosion, the Overhead Breath, and Dazzling Destruction swirls to send the team down at different times and kill as many as they can to keep the number low. And for DPS, remember you can keep dots on both dragons to double dip your damage. And that's it for Valiona and Theralion. The Council has 5 different bosses spread over 3 phases and each have their own abilities. In phase 1, stack the bosses together with range stack a bit further away. Feludius casts Hydrolance, so make sure it never goes off. Water bombs are missiles around the room, and if you get hit, you'll get waterlogged, which slows you, so remove it by running into fire or you'll die to Glaciate. Glaciate is massive fall-off damage centered on the boss that one-shots anyone too close, so have the tank drag the boss away before the cast starts or you'll probably all f***ing die. Ignatius has a frontal, so face him away. He leaps to a random range player, then charges back to the tank, knocking away and damaging anyone hit. The charge leaves flames behind, so don't stand in them unless you're clearing your debuff. Aegis of Flame gives him a damage shield and deals ramping raid-wide damage until you break and interrupt it, so hard swap to get it down ASAP. Heart of Ice and Burning Blood are ramping dots that can be dispelled, but with each tick they give anyone nearby a damage increase against the opposite type. If it's on you, run to the opposite group to spread the buff around before you dispel it so everyone can enjoy their passes. On heroic, you also get Static Overload, making someone deal splash damage to anyone nearby. And Gravity Core also makes someone deal splash damage but reduces movement speed and haste around them. Remove both of these by running into the opposite one, so put a safety mark somewhere for them to run to. When either boss reaches 25%, you'll start phase 2 with the next 2 bosses. And you can stack these 2, but one teleports around a bit and have the raid spread out. Orion teleports far away, then begins a heavy damage cast on the tank, so make sure you kick it. Lightning Rod marks 3 players and casts Chain Lightning on them, so piss off to the corner and don't stand near each other either. He also summons Moving Tornadoes that knock you up and give you swirling winds, making you levitate. Make sure you get this buff before Terastra casts Quake, or you'll all f***ing die. Eruption spawns ground spikes around Terastra, so watch out and don't get hit. Hardened Skin makes him take 50% less damage, so make sure sure you always kick this too, and Gravity Well spawns a swirling orb near a random player that damages and pulls you in. Dipping into the swirling gives you a grounded debuff, so you can survive Thundershock, which deals lethal raid-wide damage to anyone without it. On Heroic, you now get Flame Strike, which targets a random player, so move out of it or die, and it leaves a patch of fire on the ground. You also get Frozen Orb, which fixates someone, exploding if it reaches them, so kite it over the flame patch to get rid of them both. And if there isn't a fire patch, panic like a little bitch until one spawns. Again, when one of them reaches 25%, you'll start phase 3, where they form the Mighty Morphin Elemental Monstrosity. Its health is based on how much each boss finished with, so keep damage as even as you can to make the last phase as quick as possible. For tanks, he constantly drops pools under him, growing bigger when he stands in them, so kite him around the edge of the room when they appear, and range stack in the middle of the room to avoid the pools. For healers, Electric Instability is a raid-wide chain lightning that targets more players every time it's cast as a soft enrage, so save some CDs for later in the phase to keep everyone alive. Ranged can split into a few groups 10 yards apart to reduce the damage, but only if your healers are struggling. Also for healers, Gravity Crush targets 3 players, lifting them up and dealing 9% of their health every half second, so spot heal them until it's over. Lava Seed throws out a shitload of exploding fire spots, so find a safe space and don't stand near them. Then kill the boss before you run out of room, your healers are out of mana, and the whole raid is out of hope. And that's it for the Ascendant Council. Cho'gall is the final boss of Bastion of Twilight on normal and has 2 phases. If you get more than 25 corruption before phase 2, you'll grief your raid. So don't. At 25, you get a debuff that gives you more corruption, so healers make sure to dispel it ASAP. At 50, you'll do a frontal of shit randomly on people. At 75, you'll start throwing shadow bolts at people. And at max corruption, you can't be healed, you'll deal more damage, and you'll eventually fucking die. And the more corruption you have, the more damage you take in phase 2, so be nice to your healers and keep it down. In phase 1, the boss swaps between Flames Orders and Shadows Orders. Flames Order makes his melee deal extra fire damage and spawn patches of fire around the room, so don't stand in them, and tanks be prepared. And Shadows Orders makes him pulse heavy raid-wide damage, so assign healer cooldowns for this. On Heroic, the ad he absorbs gives him more of each buff based on how much health it has when he eats it. Everyone swap to the Shadow Lord as the AoE hurts even without the stacks, but you shouldn't need to focus the Fire Lord as much unless your tanks would blow away with a gentle breeze. Conversion targets a few players and mind controls them, making them buff the boss, so interrupt all of them ASAP. And for tanks, Fury of Cho'gall is a tank hit with a damage taken increase, so swap every 1 to 2 stacks or before you die. When Adherent ads spawn, have a tank pick them up while everyone swaps and kills them. Depravity is an AoE that increases corruption, so interrupt it, and dodge the Shadow Crash missiles or you'll get even more corruption. When they die, they drop a pool that gives corruption if you stand in it, so take them away at low health to keep the pools out of the way, just remember not to range your healers. The pools spawn a bunch of slimes that you need to CC and slow while killing them, as they give a load of corruption if they reach anyone. On Heroic, you now get 2 adherents at a time, so pump some DPS into them to kill them quickly. When the boss reaches 25%, you start phase 2, which is just a DPS race. He deals raid-wide ticking damage and gives everyone corruption the whole phase, and the damage increases the more corruption you have. For tanks, you still get Fury of Cho'gall, so keep swapping before you die. Tentacles spawn in groups that channel damage on random players, so have ranged interrupt and kill them. On Heroic, the tentacles also give corruption, so interrupting them is more important, but don't take too much damage off the boss or you'll die to the soft enrage. Then just kill the boss before the ramping damage makes your healers quit to play Season of Discovery. Sinestra is the real final boss of Bastion of Twilight and has 3 phases. During phase 1, the boss deals 40% less damage and starts at 60% health. Her aggro range is huge, so have a hunter or mage reset the boss to pre-position next to her rather than running in to maximize DPS. And during the fight, if no one is in her range, she randomly curb stomps people. For healers, Flame Breath is raid-wide damage every 20 seconds, so try to heal it without CDs unless it gets spicy. Again for healers, Rack is a heavy ramping dot on someone that splits in 2 when dispelled, but resets the damage. The first target should keep it as long as possible, so use defensives and immunities to save healers grief. Spot heal anyone who has it, dispelling before it gets too hard, and hope you phase before a second one goes out. Twilight Slicer spawns 2 orbs that fixate 2 people, connecting with a laser and dealing damage around them, so kite them away from the raid until they despawn. Run together in a U-shape away from, then back towards the raid, and everyone else move away from the orbs before they activate. And lastly, waves of whelps spawn that need to be picked up by an off-tank, but don't kill them yet. When they die, they drop expanding pools that don't disappear, and if it touches another dead body, it reses them, so don't be that guy who fucks the pool for meters. Take the first wave or 2 to the eggs on either side of the boss to drop the pools out of the way. At 30%, you start phase 2, so run to the orange shield at the back of the room to avoid being one-shot, and the tank on the ads should drag them to the back corner. During phase 2, melee stay at the back of the room to kill the ads, while range split into 2 groups each with a healer to kill the eggs on either side of the boss. And the remaining healers keep the friendly NPC alive so he can keep doing his Harry Potter beam, because if he dies, it'll wipe the raid. First, kill the whelps in one spot in the corner of the room to drop the pools, then kill the ones that respawn away from the purple shit. The revived whelps don't drop pools, so just kill them anywhere else. Drakes and spike callers need to be picked up by a tank, and the Drake has a frontal, so face it away. Focus the spike caller and interrupt Unleash Essence with things like Gouge and Scattershot, but don't stun or CC it or it'll fuck you up. And don't drag the Drake over the pools or it'll fuck you up too. Meanwhile, Rain should move to the eggs and attack the boss to drain her mana until she removes the egg shields. When she does, you've got 30 seconds to try and kill them or you'll make phase 2 way too long, so save some DPS cooldowns if you have to. Once both eggs are dead, you start phase 3 where she gets full health and now does full damage. Clean up the remaining ads during the transition and get ready to repeat phase 1 but with everything doing way more damage. At the start of the phase, the raid gets a massive haste buff and 5% mana every second for 3 minutes, as a thank you for saving the NPC. Stack Lust on top of this and blast the boss as much as you can while you have it, because you'll be struggling when you lose it. The orbs, the raid-wide damage, and the rack debuff are all the same but do way more damage, so deal with them the same as you did in phase 1. Have a tank pick up the whelps and AoE them down until low, then have a DPS kill each one far away from each other to get rid of them. Kill them near the back and sides of the room as the pools just keep on growing, so drop them close to the pools without making them respawn, and try to leave the middle clear for the orb runners. When the haste buff eventually drops, rotate healer CDs to keep everyone alive while you struggle through the last few percent to get your kill before the room fills with ooze. And that's it for Sinestra. Congrats on your kill, hopefully. Probably one of the more interesting classic fights so far and a challenging end to the raid. Now it's on to the rest of them. Like and subscribe if you found these useful. I'll catch you in the next one.